have been made with intent, and you could realize the seriousness, the discipline in it, something which I had seen even in the Dalal consultants' works then. If you want to start something on your own of this size, you need to take at least 2 generations of life. So why not enjoy the boat which is already built and you become the captain of it? So the spirit of not giving up, you just can't give up. You have to, because I remember a time in one of the offices, I wouldn't name which, but when things were down in the dumps, and this was in the year, I don't want to mention the year because you'll realize where I was then. So the thing is, creativity, architecture does not necessarily mean creativity. It's not necessarily that you have to be a good craftsperson, because nowadays everything's done by machines. But if you have a creative streak for design, yes, you want to identify, or you need to have somebody identify for you what you're good at in this field. And the important thing is to throw yourself into the unknown.
Hello everyone. In Rupali with Rupali, today we are going to speak with Architect Atul Sasane. He has been a dear friend, a colleague for almost 25 more years now. And I have seen him as a person, as a young student, working together with him till what he has achieved today. A perfectionist, a person who would love to question everything, right from education to academics to what do you mean by design, why should design be this, and a very interesting personality who has gathered certain experiences through these questions which he questioned himself. He's here to share with you all those experiences and a great learning that I'm sure everybody will benefit on. Let's meet him. Hi everyone, we have with us Architect Atul Sasane, a very close dear colleague of mine. I know him for quite a few years and I have always found him as a very disciplined, organized person, a perfectionist, which he will be too humble to agree upon, I'm sure of that. But as far as I know him, he has come a long way. And knowing him from these initial years of just after graduation, in the first year, once you get your degree and we are working in a firm, and that is where I met him. And today he has achieved something which is a dream of many youngsters to pursue. We will listen to what his journey was and let's welcome him. Hi Atul.
Hi.
Finally, you have given us time to be through.
Well, I think you found it worthy of me to be here, so that's how I'm here.
Yes, Atul. So a journey which began in a small town as a student, and then you even at that time where Bombay was a dream for you to come and visit.
Only heard of it.
Yeah. And then going to Middle East for almost 7 years, conducting huge projects and almost looking at a history of gathered learnings, which you mentioned that these are your experiences which actually taught you architecture. So we would love to know how you began initially. Why did you choose architecture, or how did you choose this profession?
Well, this profession not necessarily was a choice till I reached a certain age. But generally the trend in my mindset was, since a kid, was more about inquisitivity. I mean, I remember my grandfather used to get me some batteries and cells and, I used to play around with that. And so it was the journey started long back. But when it came down to taking the decisions after graduation, which is 12, of course, my initial, life in the village was more related to, grounded to reality. And then, of course, moving to Pune in 1978 in a hostel environment where you actually grew up in a very cosmopolitan set of friends, if you'd want to call it.
Right.
Dragging your bag at the age of 7 from a dormitory, and sacrifices which parents did on one side. So you basically evolved as you went along. I mean, I also remember a photograph which a friend of mine, which I had self-clicked then, which I call my own selfie, was sent, and he said that probably, you'll become a great photographer one day. So that taught me about why not cinematography. And then photography got into a hobby, not necessarily professionally. But then after 12th, you have to make a choice, which is a professional career. So I had 3 things in mind. One was cinematography. Since FTI, I was very much in Pune. Computer science, that is basically BCS, had just,
Okay, yeah.
that was one of them. And the third one was architecture. And architecture actually was a part of my exposure happened pre-12th. From my 10th, my uncle was an architect in Ahmednagar. And I used to go and sit in his office during the 10th standard and whatever. And he would take me to the sites. And that's something that got me introduced to architecture per se, not knowing what architects do except for, they design houses, because that's the scale of projects that he did then. Having said that, he also had a very controversial life because he was a very selfless architect. He would do free work for his clients because they couldn't afford, but they had dreams. He was a very religious person. So for him, it was like seva bhav.
Yeah.
And my parents then, didn't quite approve of it, because seeing his condition, they said, this is not something that will earn you your bread and butter. Because his family literally grew up on bread and milk. So that's where it was. But yes, I mean, it kind of gave me a direction as to what I should be doing or what I wanted to do. And the second important factor, which was paramount towards going towards a creative field, is that less studies. Okay. So if you put all A, B, C together, then okay, you want to do a professional course which doesn't involve studies. But as luck would have it, I didn't do very well in 12th. Not luck, but probably my earning. I had to take admissions. I couldn't necessarily be into architecture because government colleges then were very,
Few, yeah.
So there was one in Pune, which was Abhinav, and one in Bombay. I had never seen Bombay till I actually joined the 4th year of architecture, if you'd want to call it. So with influence, my dad got me admitted to an engineering college, which was for industrial electronics. But then my name on the waiting list here also emerged. And so actually I literally...
In architecture college, huh?
College in Pune, because I had given the entrance exam, because every college had their entrance exams there.
Right.
It wasn't centralized as it is today. So it gave me a ray of hope, and I kind of decided that let me go to Pune and sit on till my waiting list is cleared. And I took a gamble, if you want to call it. I cancelled my engineering college admissions there, and I came here without any admissions. And so I was in a limbo. But yeah, I mean, I got through. The waiting list shifted and I got through into architecture, and that's where my journey in architecture started. And of course, influenced by my uncle, resisted for not being a profession which would earn you your bread and butter. And probably the only thing which I had some bearing of and feeling confident that this is what is the best I could do in creative side, which does not involve studies. Okay. And of course, my drawing was good and all that, but that really doesn't matter in the long run. The best of architects are the ones who sketch the worst. So that's something that I learned later on. But that's how my journey in architecture began.
Right. So from a batch of 1995, which you're very proud of.
Yes, 1995 architecture is a 5-year course. I joined in 89, supposed to have graduated in 94. But yeah, I mean, the inquisitivity sometimes gets so much that your, academicians generally tend to get challenged. And sometimes ego battles come in the way. And well, I mean, then it did what it did to me. I had to take an additional year in college. I mean, I wrote to the university, all those things happened. But then at the end of it, I thought to myself, I mean, this is a profession. This happened in the fourth year, actually, or the fifth year, rather. One of the subjects, I won't get into the details of it, but by then I had kind of realized what architecture is about. College necessarily doesn't teach you how to design. No one can teach you that. And it's a long drawn profession. You could actually be working till the last breath. So that, academics, then degree and all that was not something that had so much of an importance. But then I realized that also has importance as you grow and go beyond a certain limit. Then, academics is someone who certifies that this subject is required, and that's generally universities or institutes. And so I lost on some of those in the later years. But generally, yes, academics gave me an orientation of what is to be done. So that's how I took 6 years instead of 5. So my foundation was very strong.
That's true. And what are you right now shows a very niche area of design, shows a very, a very specific part of design which goes into specialization or services or construction. How did you develop these, or how did you realize that this was your calling or your passionate area where you would love to work?
See, having kind of not seen Bombay and the urge to see what a city is like, the opportunity came across. The first time to visit Bombay was during the internships that we have to do during the fourth year then.
Yeah, fourth year.
So I worked with an architect who was into stadiums and large format projects. But that was purely an architectural office. As even during my college days, I would actually, because not necessarily, I wouldn't use the word afford fees, but I came from a background which necessarily didn't have the wherewithal to, kind of the education in school which was there, or to even lose a year in college was not something that was well appreciated at home, or, likely so, because being an agricultural background and, the trend was, okay, engineer bano, doctor bano, one of those. Architecture, though they knew they had a negativity to it thanks to my uncle. But the urge to go and see Bombay was important. So that's what drove me to Bombay. And having seen Bombay once and worked there for, I was working on the National Game Stadium in Pune that time. And that's where you actually get exposed to something which is large.
Yeah.
A large format project, if you would want to call it. But that was purely an architectural, office, which wasn't necessarily something that gave me an exposure, right? But it gave me the urge to go back to Bombay. So when I finished my fifth year field, so-called, I decided to join a large firm by the name of Dalal Consultants, which were initially Parsons of Asia, an American company. And that's the first time I actually realized that there is an architect's role in a consultancy company which has an engineering background, which is into industries. And while I finished the interview and I turned back from the cabin where I was giving the interview, there was an entire hall of about, probably something like 30, 40 meters length. And all engineers with all those boards. Something that reminded you of Fountainhead, the Howard Rock and Peter Keating, and those things came to your mind, because those are the scenes that
exactly those were the inspirations and motivations that every student normally has.
Yeah, that's the beginning point, that you are the Bachchan of, Howard Rock is the Bachchan of architecture in that book, whatever it is. But yeah, you have read this but never felt it. And when you start physically seeing things which are actually manifesting into reality, then you believe that yes, you're on the right track, you're on the right journey, and probably there is something which is opening up these avenues little by little, step by step. Not that I believe in, destiny and all that. I don't believe in destiny. But yes, in hindsight, this is how it, when you look back, you try to connect the dot and try to make logic out of it.
Yeah.
So this is where, that office kind of And the large format projects that they were doing in, Saudi Arabia or Sri Lanka or elsewhere was fascinating, because that's where you know that there's a project manager who looks after 3 projects or something. There is a technical team which backs him up on structures, processes, electromechanical services. The architects who actually learn the codes and know the codes, and they make sure that they're code testing everything, whether it fits within those parameters. So when you see such a huge machinery working together, you realize that there is bigger to this than what it is, right? Not something which is a boutique office, which is not bad. But you were generally exposed to things like which you had read in a book like Fountainhead. You see that that's, at least visually, there is a connect, because some of the scenes which are, explained there of larger organizations and the politics that happens is something that, kind of keeps you seeking for more, whether it's reality. Okay? And that's where I realized that probably this is this place where I want to work. But when I got into it, the discipline of doing larger projects is something that has a very straightforward, straight line, in which if you want to do something big, then you need to have a mindset to do it. Okay? And that the mindset can only be, and those times, the thing was like, you never went to an educational institute to learn how to do management in architecture, or how to do design management, or how to do, documentation. So all these things were so well tabulated there that even the brush, we used to use the Bharat blade, right? And the first 6 months I was given the task of, erasing those rotary inks. There was also parallelly, this was in 96, 95, 96, when even computers and those flatbed, printers were introduced. And so what actually started happening is, I started realizing that there is more to this than just architecture. So architecture is not what I learned in Dalal Consultants. What I learned is design requires a discipline. It requires a process. And that is what I got exposed to, how drawing numbering is done. And this is something that wasn't an Indian firm. It was an Indian person who bought over a US-based firm. So there was something that came from outside. And that actually set the tone for what to do next.
Oh,
right?
Wonderful.
But that was the first exposure I had. Discipline got me. I got the concept of discipline in if you want to do something bigger. But those were formative years again. Didn't know exactly whether this is architecture. I had done my thesis on services on 5-star hotels, because it involves a lot of services in the background. The state-of-the-art services are used there. So, the other, So this is the other side of it. And I'm bringing back my parents in here because they came and visited me in Bombay. And they say, where are you living? Is this what it is? And then goes back to my uncle, look at...
Oh, we had told you.
And I said, yeah, okay, fine. And then, of course, I had good friends. So I used to I had a friend who was into textiles. A cable industrial estate in Parel was a place which was industrial galas. He had a big table because he used to spread those tagas of cloth. And he said, you can use my office to sleep in the nights. So I used to sleep there. I had a VIP bag. I used to have that at the head. He had an attendant who was a chowkidar there, who would every morning religiously give me a cup of coffee. So it was like I'm in royal life. Okay, get up in the morning, get your coffee served at your bedside, wash up there, pack your bag, go to work, come back in the evening. And while I was in Bombay, the salary with Dalal Consultants was, I wouldn't want to mention the figure, but it was enough to buy you 2 vada pavs in the evening, or vada pav in the afternoon. Once a week, you could have a good meal in the restaurant next door. Some of it went into rent. So basically, 1/3 of it went into food, 1/3 went into rent, and 1/3 went into a Pune-Bombay pass.
Okay.
Because my parents had by then shifted to, Pune from the village. So in a way, that's how it was. And at that point in time, I didn't have a degree. while in Dalals. And then when I joined Lloyd's, that's when I got my degree. So basically, yeah, it's been a journey of ups and downs. And, I wouldn't say it was a battle, but it has been a very fruitful walk, from there to as you transit. So basically that, and then I came to Pune as a career generally, and working on project like Magarpatta City, which was again something that happened because Lloyd's was doing a project in Bangalore of a similar scale. And I joined the architect who was designing that, but Jamani. So I resigned and I came down, and like I was telling you.
I think, was very short.
Yeah, that was a 2 month stint with him, which even you could call it whimsical that, you resign over a table saying that, I want to resign because internally you feel this is not the place you want to be. It was one of the largest offices in Pune. And when you say that this is not in line with what I have been coming along, which is a graph which is showing me where I need to go, and this is totally, different from what, instead of going that way, it's kind of bringing me down, then you know that you're on the wrong path. You're climbing the wrong branch, and it's better to climb down as fast as possible, as early as possible before you climb way up, and then you realize that, coming back is also difficult. So I took that decision, came down. This first stint, long-drawn stint, if you would want to call it, of a good 10 years, 96, 97 to 2006, with a break in between, of course, because the markets were down. I lost my job also in between. I got married in 2021. So, not 21, sorry, 2001. Shows I'm growing old. So anyway, so basically that's when...
It also shows your marriage is still quite young.
Yes, that's true. The years in between haven't happened. Okay. So basically that was my, that is where my journey into what I actually want to began, after having all these office in Bombay, office in, Dalal Consultants, Lloyd's, Pune. So this was a journey of about 2 to 3 years. All this happened, change of firms in 3 years, at least 4 firms in 3 years. Trying to find what is it that you want. But yes, there was a direction, having seen that large office, the discipline, this, that, and then jumping onto an architect who had come from the US, jiske office mein music bajta tha. I sent in my resume there. I mean, I went to hand over my resume myself, and he was in a meeting. I very distinctly remember that, and I still joke about it with my colleagues. And I, had some of my colleagues from those days still, because we worked for a good 10 years together.
Okay.
A very good bonding. And he was a person who was actually a designer, right? He had come down from the US after about 30 years. He passed out from JJ in the 60s sometime. He was there till the 95s or something, and then he decided to come back and start his practice in India. And I happened to resign and come and sit on a bike opposite Naz, and a friend comes down and tells me, office music bajta hai, American architect, and that's how I land up at his office. Total accident. I hand him my resume, and he says that, what have you come for? And I said, well, I wanted to seek an appointment. So he says that, why didn't you call up? He had also started new. He didn't have a phone. So I said, you don't have a phone, so I've come personally. So that's the first interaction. And from there on, it was 10 years. We did some great work together.
What were, if you can name a few?
Yeah, well, this was in 96, 97. Since he had come down, real estate as a large format projects in Pune was just starting. So there was Marigold Premises, which was on the anvil, which is being done, was being done by Vascon engineers, a pretty prominent large format work then. We were doing something for other institutes like Alpic Finance. Hinjewadi was having some big, Satyam Computers, or there was Veritas. These guys were coming down and setting up large format office spaces here. So it gave the opportunity to work on large format projects. And since I had seen something of, the discipline that goes.
I was about to ask you that what made you stay there for the 10 years?
Yeah, in fact, This person, I wouldn't hesitate to name him, Kirit Vora. He had a firm, he still has that firm by the name of Kipa Architects. Actually, Kipa stands for Kirit and Padmaja. They were a husband and wife, both from JJ. They fell in love, they got married, they formed this firm. And he came down to India and started this firm. And he came with the discipline background for sure. He's a man who would come to office at 7 in the morning, make his own breakfast. He was alone, he had come, his wife and children were back there. Make his own breakfast, be at his table at 9 and start work. He would be the last one to leave office, close the office and go. And all day he would work. So, and that's when we would talk about man hours and, how it costs to it's people sitting idle, not working at their computers. And you really didn't know what this at that age in a way. Then, he had got a lot of hand-drawn drawings of the projects that he had done. And those drawings actually spoke to you. It told you that, look here, I'm not nonsense. I have been made with intent. And you could realize the seriousness, the discipline in it, something which I had seen even in the Dalal consultants' works then, which is, of course, now, it was taken over by Mott MacDonald later on. So when you get to someone who reinforces that, right, what you believed then, after about 2-3 years, you get to see something like this. And this is a man who actually, as an architect, okay, because Dalal Consultants it had an architectural department. And it had a system that they followed. But this is a man who actually lived those drawings in a way, right? He created them, he designed them. And so that's what actually got me into the involved in what a good drawing is, right? And then checking drawings with the technical background, whether the shaft sizes are adequate, ye kaise jayega, wo kaise jayega. So, it all came together, started coming together, and there was someone who was observing you all the time, right? That someone is needed to tell you you're good at this.
Yeah.
And he had this, which I do agree with. We have at least about maybe 30,000 students which pass out of architecture in Maharashtra, or maybe more you know better what that figure is. But as I know, there are 30 colleges or 35 colleges under Pune region itself.
Only in Mumbai there are 30.
So in Pune is also the same, right? And the batches now are no more 40. They are something like 120, 180. So if you take something like an 80 students batch into this, 2,400 students, architects come out of. Now, all can't be designers. Design is a gift of some people. So what do the others do? But that's where I realized that there is something else to architecture field than designing. And he used to design. He used to say, I'm a designer. And I would love to do the drawings for those. And they used to be all weird shapes, squares and, tilted squares in the third dimension also. Or, weird. Weird from the Indian context, because we were always taught to do some things in straight lines, only with the set squares and this thing. But this is a man who came with the background of wood construction and, large format projects, and who had enjoyed the, luxury of using technology on CAD and all that. So I got more involved in building those thoughts on paper on ground. Right from doing the center line, setting them out, going to site. So those 10 years was more about realizing your strengths, realizing your passion in the field of architecture. Not that I didn't have my own sense of design, but what was more important is to know that you have a strength, which someone's telling you your strength is in this. And in that office, we actually started a design department and a production department. Okay, so it was like, it grew to be about a 20-man office, 20, 25 at one point. And there was a design cell who would do only designing. And I got into actually managing design to production to see how it gets constructed on site. So all those weird shapes and sizes and levels of the ground and, understanding. Then when I got into the next job, I realized that these are things which have things called hydrology. This is called this is called that, because those jargons came more from the corporate world. But when you're learning on ground, you only know what you want to achieve, the objective, but you don't know, when you're talking in a larger audience, you don't know what to call it, right? So yeah, so that 10 years actually gave me a direction based on that strength of what I learned there and the confidence I gained of doing larger projects is what actually told me what I do best or what I enjoy doing best.
Exactly.
So yes, I mean, I did design, but what I enjoyed more is somebody designs and you actually translate that thought, which is freehand sketches, into architectural graphics. And that translates onto constructible drawings on site. And then you look at both, right? And then you say, yes, this transition from a thought to reality needs someone to bridge it. And that is the production part of it. So interacting with consultants, structural engineers, challenging them, debating with them, they hating you because you're trying to push the barriers of what they are comfortable doing. So yeah, but that gave me a very definite direction.
Exactly.
Management had never come until then. It was more technical, translating architectural design and intent into technical stuff to be constructed. And it was very rewarding.
And I don't think we had, we were even aware of courses like project management or construction management or, ever that time. I mean, getting a degree itself was
Their management was never in construction a word which was, though it did start happening in the 2000, late, end of 90s, around about the cusp of 2000, the year 2000, there was this word buzz going about quality management, ISO certification, and those kind of things. And these were all new concepts which were coming in because these projects were too small to apply those principles.
So how did the Middle East happen then?
Well, Middle East didn't happen out of accident, it happened out of a choice. But Middle East happened much later.
Okay.
This was in 2006. Stoop Consultants, which was one of the largest organizations, Indian-owned consultancy then, having about 1,500 people, engineers, had set up office in Pune. They had already offices in all the metros. They had an office in Delhi, Madras, Bombay. Bombay was the head office, Calcutta, Hyderabad, blah, 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 all over the place, about 13, 14 locations. And they were multifaceted. They were into bridges. They were into, large format projects, ports. They were into roads and highways. They were into large format buildings like stadiums. And they had a book actually, which was used to be in our school library. The works. It was actually a Indo-French company, originated in France, taken over by Mr. C.R. Alimchandani, who was the owner then, and who actually grew that company from 4 people to 1,500.
Wow.
Right? So, and they started this office in Pune with the intent of actually having a set of young people. Otherwise, Stoop generally had people who were an average age. I'm not talking about the architectural division, but generally they didn't have a second line of defense. They were only the senior people.
Okay.
And everyone else was working under them. So there was no second rung. And Pune office, and since they were spread so large all over the place, they needed to have a central production hub.
Oh, fantastic.
And I had kind of developed that confidence that yes, production is something which we talked about for the last 10 years. We did it. And on that strength, I applied. There is something that you had seen earlier, which actually said that you should have your own. But then someone told me along the way, if you want to start something on your own of this size, you need to take at least 2 generations of life. So why not enjoy the boat which is already built and you become the captain of it? So a ready-made thing is there which you aspire to be. Now you prove yourself here and you grow because now you have tiers, right? Right from the draftsman to being wherever it is, though it's a family owned, yes, but there are so many tiers that you can go, your teams can grow. So that's where, when I joined this company, I joined the Pune office, and I was told that we are looking for someone who can actually put teams together, and produce projects of large formats, right? And that's where that discipline, the training, the recognition, the belief, all that comes together. And then you say, now you've done your pilot's training. Now you got to actually fly a Boeing, you know. So
Exactly.
it's in a way you were graduating again. Of course, I had my degree then. Without that degree, I wouldn't have been taken in that company. So degree has its reasons to be there. But then after Stoop, when I was looking at something else, it again realized that degree isn't enough. So,
Right.
but then by then you had, kind of said that, okay, you've done everything now. So in a way, yes. So that was my first interface with international projects.
And which were the projects you handled there?
See, while in India, I was handling some work for the Commonwealth Games, the indoor velodrome stadium. That's what we did. We worked on IIM expansion for the residential in the part 2, the second campus that they had. It was an all-India campus. I worked on the Vedanta University, which was a 6,000-acre project, collaborating with an American firm from Maryland, ASG. We did hospitals for WOCAD. So, the scale, the nature, and the typology of projects, you had that entire palette in front of you. It was no more just real estate.
Yeah. Right.
It was no more just industry. It was no more just any stadiums. Because these were my first thing started, my internship was with stadiums. The second one was with industrial. The third one was real estate. The fourth, architectural firm, that's the first design office in a way I actually joined while I had a degree, was Keep Architects. And that had large format real estate projects or specialty buildings for software, which was just emerging. But when I jumped into Stoop with the intent of having a multidisciplinary setup, I realized that I'm also getting to do multidisciplinary projects. So then you start dealing with things like airports, you start dealing with things like large format hospitals for 700 beds, you start dealing with oil and gas, because they have an international office, you start getting involved in infrastructure projects for like university campuses of 6,000 acres. So, or Dharavi redevelopment for that matter. I mean, I never thought that, I would get these avenues opening up. But what that did is it kept driving me to do better. And I wouldn't say better, but if you're thrown in the high sea, you better swim. Otherwise you just drown.
That change which you were needing was seen here with every project.
Well, I don't know whether that change was a need, but that change, like 10 years with Keeper. First 5 years, I had that itch, or circumstances pushed me into doing my own stuff. So I did some small works here and there, survived, got married.
So 2016 and further years.
2016 and further years was then, then when you grow, then eventually I grew from, with Kirit Vora, I literally joined as a draftsman because he said, I don't know what you do. And I said, I don't know what I'm good at. I happened to get a chance to speak to the chairman of, and even the MD. MD was a young man, a very good man. And his father, who was the chairman. So in a way, I expressed that, I need to move on. I need something larger. It's like, you have this corporator, then he becomes an MLA, then he becomes a khasdar, or something of that sort. But that wasn't the thing. But I'm just giving you a comparison that you want to climb up. I either had the option to keep doing in a boutique office, but, somewhere you need to have that adventure, which is there. You need to respect that adventure. You need to be able to face it and move on. And that's where, I got into this Stoop thing, a multicultural, angle to things. So
what was the advice you got?
The advice, when I told him that, now I kind of have more or less done anything, he said, yeah, okay, fine. So what is it that you don't think you have done? I said, I want to work on some kind of an international office now, So he said, okay, fine, that sounds good. So why don't you, we are looking for someone to head our office in the Middle East.
Middle East. I remember you telling me I didn't have a godfather, but I suppose you earned it over your work. Some people who,
Well, now, whether to call it earned people or whether someone found that this is a gada, ye kaam kar sakta hai, or whatever it is. But I was enjoying my gadagiri also. So in a way, yes, because everyone looks at things differently. There's nothing negative to it. It was a win-win for all.
exactly, it's a give and take which, benefits both. And once you meet those people and that person across each other, I suppose that is where the whole...
The certificate that you get is the responsibilities that they give you. The responsibilities they keep giving you. And you keep delivering to that expectation. And then, you look back, would I have lasted for a span of 10 years in an organization if I were bad? Right? You wouldn't have, because if you were actually making losses, you would have told, go, Or if you were not worth it, they would have said at the first drop of ad, they would have said, okay, go, But here, I realized that while I was, willing to let go of a cushy job, because when sometimes, work becomes so comfortable that you really lose the fizz of it. Then everyone starts listening to you, and then you realize that there's no one challenging you,
That's so true.
And then you start looking for those challenges. So, in a way, that challenge came across, and I went and took on that operations, and again, that had its own set of exposures in a foreign land, travel and whatever, and doing format projects, coming back, mentoring teams here.
Middle East.
In the Middle East, yes. And
that was Kuwait and Oman.
No, that was Oman. Oman, basically some things in, you could say, Ghana, a little bit of that, Dubai, then Qatar, and of course even trying to get something in Africa. So it was basically the MENA region in a way. And so that was a very good exposure, and that's where you actually start working, not in the British office, but in an Indian office, which is governed by UK standards. REBA and all that comes into play. The contracts are actually, and that's where
the discipline reaches its epitome
when it is governed by something called contracts, and where the stakes are large, liabilities are there. You got to deliver on the dot. Otherwise, you could be sued or you could be penalized. And they are projects which are such large project formats that, I remember doing that hospital, which is a 700-bed hospital, going into millions of dollars. And we assembled a team in India, which was an architectural team of at least about 50 to 60 people. You had architects, you had structural engineers, you had electromechanical team, you had hospital planners from Jordan. So managing that big project, breaking it down into smaller parts, coordinating every drawing, we prepared something to the tune of about 1,200 drawings. Okay? Now, each drawing is got to be done in a certain discipline. It's some was being done in Pune, some in Bangalore, some in Delhi. And that's where the skill actually puts to test. That what you have learned of doing good production drawing, can you really deliver this? And it can only happen if you have people at the back end who believe in following as a captain says.
Exactly.
Right? And that's what I found in working and interacting with some of the, like even in the case of Dharavi and things of that sort. Those people, even if they didn't like your idea, right? They would support you because the team's got to win.
Oh, wonderful.
So the thing is, you can have an opinion, but when the captain takes a decision, then you follow it through and make the team win, right? Whereas what I found in India, and then this is probably not a right thing to say, but we are very individual driven. right?
Yes.
So if I don't like something, then I will not necessarily oppose it. But I have faced this, where there'll be someone who's trying to fail it, you know, and that's where we lose that's the difference I realized in a
Very important. Yes.
That's one thing I learned. Second thing I learned is no matter how young you are, if you are made the captain, then you are the captain, right? In Stoop, I was probably one of the largest, youngest captains at that position.
And that time also you had grey hair.
Yeah, I've been born with grey hair. So probably someone recognized it much before I was born that I need to have this all through. I'm losing it now, but the hair, not the head. So yeah, but see, everything has been such an evolving life in terms of what you learn, what you get. You get the good, the bad. You're able to differentiate, and you still got to take things forward, right? So the spirit of not giving up, you just can't give up. You have to, because I remember a time in one of the offices, I wouldn't name but when things were down in the dumps, and this was in the year, I don't want to mention the year because you'll realize where I was then. We had grown an office from 16 people to 75, 80 people. And with the structural engineers and all that put together, close to about 105, 120 people. There have not been many real estate slumps, so you can actually put 2 plus 2 equal to 4 and come to know where I was then. But we had to let go at least 75 to 80 people overnight.
Oh my God.
And I was told that you need not be sitting for those pink slips because it's going to be chaos. Anything could happen. But I said, no, I want to sit because these are the people who've actually worked with staff. And I want to be a part of it. Not that because someone's doing it for the fun of it. Because the company cannot pay. Because if there are no projects, where the company gets money from? If the company doesn't get money, how do you pay salaries? If you don't give salaries, how do their houses run? So it's best that you let them go because they can find better opportunities or maybe look for alternatives rather than going without pay for 7 months, 8 months. It doesn't make sense. But while I was sitting for those pink slips, the realization came that what position you hold is got so much immense depth as a person that each house runs on the decision you make. When you hold that, it's not about your whims and fancies. It's serious business of somebody's life. And that really kind of consolidates in terms of, and kind of many times, not most of the time, you look back, right? Is this decision a win-win? So everything you decide is on a win-win platform. So that's another thing which one learns. So there's been so much that's gone through.
True. This thing that you said, that the position expects a lot from you beyond just
From yourself.
From yourself, of course. Then when you are leading a team, the team is yours. So as you rightly said, win-win. Win-win is something which all decisions should impact both of you.
But that's also the case in project management, right?
With all these experiences that you have shared, I know you are very close to, always very intense when you have to talk about design and when you have to interact with students or tell them about what design is, because you always say that nobody can be a designer just by saying.
You have a degree in architecture doesn't give you.
So what do you what advice do you want to give the students?
The advice is based on what I have gone through. It could be different for anybody. Had I had a godfather, maybe my journey would have been different, right? But there's only one thing underlining this entire thing is this is a field which has various avenues. Design is one of them.
Right.
If I look back, of course, for various reasons, there have not been many great designers. And most of the, so-called masters were not architects, right? So the thing is, creativity, architecture does not necessarily mean creativity. Okay, so when you're joining College of Architecture, It's not that you necessarily need to have good drawing. It's not necessarily that you have to be a good craftsperson, because nowadays everything's done by machines. But if you have a creative streak for design, yes, you want to identify, or you need to have somebody identify for you what you're good at in this field. And the important thing is to throw yourself into the unknown. For me, probably it happened logically or whatever it is, but you got to throw yourself into something. I mean, this I'm saying from what happened to me was not that I landed somewhere accidentally, but it was something that I had kind of decided, okay, I need to climb. And I don't know whether I've even climbed yet, because there are people who've gone further. I decided to start my own practice, and probably, so you should know where to stop. You should know what is the path you want, or you need to have someone who will put you through all those aspects of making a project happen. And then you realize what your strength is. It's either you realize it and you pursue it and you test it, and you may fail. But that doesn't mean that you should stop testing it, because you might find something else which is there. In my case, probably, someone recognized it and I loved it. I loved what he recognized, and I love what he recognized for me to do, because I am enjoying it, or I enjoyed it. So one is, of course, test it, pursue, and nothing is going to happen overnight, because college will only teach you how to do things, what all to think of, or it will give you a way of what all to take into account. But you can decide to say that's all trash and still do something else which you believe you should. So the skill is something that you have to recognize yourself, that within that, the whole plate of architecture, of which design is one, and visualization is another, design management is one, coordination is one. There's so many aspects. Getting into project management could be an added advantage, because you are trained to think holistically. So methodology of construction. So in a way, for students, it's important. It'll take at least a good 7-8 years after they get out to even know whether they want to pursue architecture. I have had friends who finished architecture and who's got into lighting design. Someone who's got into interface in, interface design for Microsoft. Someone's into, landscape, or someone's into signages. So you never know, because everything is becoming so compartmentalized now. And again, it depends on what you believe you should be doing. You could be just doing small projects, which is enjoyable. Eventually enjoy what you're doing.
Absolutely.
But if you're not enjoying it, then maybe you need to leave the game and play other games.
Absolutely. Wonderful. Atul, thank you so much for being here, giving your time and these words of wisdom. I'm sure students are going to learn a lot from such experiences that you have shared with them, right? Because this is a path that each one would realize that, yes, this something must have happened with me. This is where, and this always builds up the confidence in students that, yes, everybody has gone through these hurdles and these are a part and parcel of life and we should move on.
Well, whether it is a life, whether it's a journey, eventually you have to choose one path, what you want to do. Life happens on the side. So,
Great. Thank you once again.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me here. And I hope it's been good for everybody. Thank you.